Howdy, it's tubalcain again. And you may have watched the previous 9 or 10 videos on the South Bend lathe where I take it apart and everything, and I know that it's pretty well worn, but this is going to be a proof here where I do a little project on the lathe, the first project in fact, to see how it performs. And in fact what I'm going to do is to take this Arbor here, that I don't know where I got it, but it's a milling machine Arbor, and it has a number 2 or number 3 Morse taper here. And I do not have a machine that holds that, nor do I see how this is usable without a hole for a drawbar. That's just a center hole. But what I want to do is to turn this down to a straight shank to 3/4 inch diameter so that it'll fit in a 3/4 collet on my Bridgeport. And I believe this is a 1 inch bore here, not bore, shank. So let me take that apart and show you what it looks like. There's several collars here, so you can change the position of the cutter on the Arbor or accommodate cutters of different thicknesses. So let me take those collars off. And I've already had this apart one time, and in fact there was a key in there which I've taken out. Interesting to see the way they terminated the key slot there with a hole that had been drilled. And I got a little rust to remove here, but the whole idea now is I'm going to hold this between centers on that South Bend lathe. I'm going to put a dog on this end, a drive dog, and I do not want to, that barely goes on, and I do not want to put a dog on the thread for fear of damaging it, and I don't want it to slip on the this surface here. So I'm going to put the dog, and the dog has a set screw that is called a dog point for that matter, and I'm going to put that right into the keyway along with a little piece of brass to protect it. And then it's ready to go, I think, onto the South Bend lathe. I may have to use a different dog. You never know till you get out onto the lathe to see if a dog is going to fit, if it has the reach that you need here and here. And it certainly does vary from lathe to lathe. So I'll tighten that down after I get it on the lathe. And then simply turn this using the power feeds down to 3/4 diameter. And I intend to debut my new Mitutoyo, new used Mitutoyo Digimatic, or whatever it's called, electronic micrometer. First time use. Okay, I'll see you momentarily in the garage. Here we are at the South Bend 9 inch, and the length of the tail on the dog is just barely sufficient to reach to the dog plate, but it's going to work. And I'm going to use carriage stop and the Aloris tool post with carbide if it works alright. I may have to change back to high-speed steel. Part of the problem with these older lathes is they don't have very much of a great spindle speed, and carbide really needs more spindle speed than what this has, but we'll see how it works. And just about ready to take my first cut. Got the belt in the middle position here in direct drive, and I'll have to get my glasses on and see what feed I have here. Be sure and wear your safety glasses and observe all safety rules when working on the lathe. Unfortunately, it's a little chilly out here in the garage, and I'm forced to wear long sleeves. Almost need a jacket on. Someone asked me what kind of safety glasses do I wear, since I wear prescription glasses, and generally this kind. They're kind of bulky, but they fit over prescription glasses, which is still a bit of a hardship for me because often I wear another pair of magnifying glasses, so it's a bit of a problem for me. But let's take a look at the setup here now. Between centers with the dog. Now I had to use a spring-loaded live center here because this type of bulky ball bearing center is too thick right here and will hit the end of the tool. I could also use a regular center using center lube, but I happen to have one of these. You probably will not have one. That's a concentric brand. Now the diameter here near the tail end of this is about, not about, it's 783, and it needs to be 750 throughout the full length here. So that's kind of my indicator. I don't really need to measure until I start to cut on there, because I've got quite a bit of a taper here that has to come off. So I'm ready to start. Got the tailstock locked, the quill locked. This is just a trial cut now, very light cut to see how it works, and I've got the stop set, and the feed is about 2,000. It's a real fine feed, and I'm using cutting oil here. And while I was at Arnfest, I met a man, and his first name is Palmer, and he gave me a couple of these oil cans that he had made out of beverage cans, and he's got a magnet in there, so I can lay that on the machine, and it's not going to rattle off on me. Way too slow speed or feed. I think I'll ramp it up a notch. That's a 4,000th feed, which is more like it. Cutting a little faster now, but you see quite a bit of vibration. I'm already at 800 thousandths here, and the finish is satisfactory, but I'll take a light finishing pass. It'll be just a little better than that. But you see the vibration, and it might be because of the tail of the dog, or I don't know. I really haven't used this lathe yet, so this is all an experiment. And this would probably be the second to the last cut already. And I'm coming right up against my carriage stop as I complete the cut. And it's not bad. Remember that this is way too long anyway, probably to fit up into that R8 collet. So in the end, sometimes I cut these shanks off. So if I make trial passes here to determine the depth and then measure and all of that, I don't care if this isn't real good here, because I may or may not cut that off. And I stop from time to time and measure as I'm getting close to the diameter, so I don't want to go under. And it's 768, so I'm going to back it up, take just a few more thousandths off of this, and that'll be my second to the last cut. See what I got here. And I just got 3 or 4 more thousandths to go. facing off the shoulder. Maybe you couldn't hear me, but I just faced off the shoulder, and that was my last pass, I think. And at this point here, where the collet is going to catch, it's 749.5, so I'm a half thousandth under. Now I'm going to take a little emery cloth and polish the rust off of this portion here and just touch this up a little bit. The finish isn't great, probably because of that vibration, but it's good enough for what this is. There's a radius on the end of the carbide tool, so I have a little bit of a radius in here, but it doesn't matter at all in here because, well, it just doesn't matter. I hit it just a little bit with a file, and I need to clean that file. Now be very careful filing with the dog, because that if you hit the tip of the file on the dog, it's going to throw the file back on you. Do not file if you're uncomfortable, and make sure you always have a handle on your file. I know somebody's going to ask what kind of tool I'm using here, and this is a genuine Aloris AXA12, and it says TPG on the insert, so my brother must have put that on. I didn't, or wherever this came from. I didn't buy it because the genuine Aloris really isn't affordable, as you know. But it worked quite nicely on this 9-inch lathe, and I'm at least semi-satisfied with the way this worked on this old lathe. So even though the lathe is worn, as shown in the previous videos, you know, it's going to be capable of good work and reasonably accurate work. So let me take this out now. And I got some marks there. I'm not concerned about those. Some little gouges, I suppose. Finish is not perfect, but that's not the lathe's fault. That's the tool. That's a used insert, and I don't know. I think that vibration might have something to do with it. All right, I'll see you down in the shop in a few moments, downstairs. It's cold out here. You know, this is really only a 15-minute job if I wasn't videotaping it. Back in the basement now. Take that dog off. Remember, I had that little piece of brass in there to protect it. Now, looking at it when it's in the collet, the 3/4 collet, you see that's as far in as it's going to go. So this is really, in my estimation here, my personal opinion, where's a ruler? I got 100 of them. 100 of them, but none on the bench. So it's really 7/8 too long, so I'm going to take 1 inch or 1.25 inches off of it. I think I'll do that now. So how will I do that? I'm simply going to put it in the bandsaw. I'm going to mark it here, 1.25 inches, and bandsaw it off, and that'll be just rough cut. Maybe I'll face it then. And this is the setup on the bandsaw for sawing it off, and I've got a mark on there at 1.25 inches. That is how much I cut off, and then I faced it. I often cut shanks off on different tools, including boring heads and things like that, because I want this to really come right down to the face of the collet if I want. You don't want a whole lot sticking down like this, unless there's some precarious reach that you have to make, and then to me you don't have enough support. But that's just the way I want it. And this appears to be commercially made. I don't know where I got it, but it's not homemade. It is nicely made, but it's not tool sealed. It is not hard. As a matter of fact, rather free machining. And what I wanted to show you here was also that, okay, let's take another measurement here. Right about in this area here, where the collet's going to grip, again, I'm at 749 and almost a half, so that's good. And I'm loving my new Mitutoyo, by the way. You saw that in one of the other videos, but that's the first time I actually used it. So let me wipe this off, clean it a little bit, and reassemble it, and just make a couple of remarks. It looks like I might have a little bit of filing to do right there with a needle file if the key doesn't fit in there, but it probably will, but I might touch that up. Now, a couple of comments here about collars, and you're going to see a lot of collars on horizontal mills, and I need to clean those just a little bit. And I've already cleaned the faces of them right here. They were a bit rusty, and I think probably from coolant at one time before I owned it, but these have been ground and they're precision, so you do not want to take more off of one side than the other. So I cleaned them like this with some fine emery cloth, laying them on my surface plate, both sides. That took the rust off, and then you can see the grinding marks. But the reason for that is when you assemble these on an arbor, and it matters even more when the arbor is real long, but should there be a chip between some of them, as you tighten this, what's going to happen is it's going to bend the arbor. Probably unnoticeable in a short, what is this, 1.5 inches long. You know, it isn't going to be measurable even. Alright. Now make sure always, we were taught to wipe these off thoroughly before we assemble them. And I already have a little bit of oil on the I'll stack those, and you can decide where you want this depending on what the job is, and you got to assemble it such that the cutter is going to rotate to the right, unless for some oddball reason you're doing it as a left hand. So we'll wipe these. I'm going to take them back off and polish them. And then I got this bodacious nut, a couple drops of oil on there always. That needs to be cleaned too. Now, how am I going to tighten that? I certainly don't want to put this into the vise and then tighten it. So that'll be tightened after it's in the milling machine. And I may never use this, but it's ready to use after I polish it if I decide to do so. There it is, assembled, ready to go. I still have to tighten the nut, and I polished up the collars a little bit, but although this collar had been galled by being run into the work at one point, so that's a little rough, but it could matter less. And This again is a 1-inch arbor, so any small cutter within the range of what a Bridgeport can do could be mounted on their on the 1-inch arbor. And I do mainly slitting, but I don't know if I have any slitting saws that are that size. So there it is, ready to use. I think you can buy these also with an RH shank. Okay, hope you enjoyed that first little job that I did on that South Bend 9-inch, since it was well, not restored, but kind of renewed a little bit. I think it's going to be an adequate machine for jobs like what I just did right here. This is tubalcain saying so long for now. Work safely in your basement machine shop, and I'll see you in my next video.